How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the OneIQ Football Talk Podcast. Brendan and Sterling coming at you for yet another week of football action. And last week, we talked about how football is officially back, but for both of us, we finally got some preseason action that we could finally watch our teams in. You got to see your team on Thursday. My team just finished up their game here today. I'm going to be going back and watching through it fully a little bit later, as I had to kind of do some media work here today. But first off, buddy, how you doing here on this actually surprisingly nice Saturday for us?
Oh, not too bad, man. I mean, I didn't get to watch all of the Steelers game. You know, as you know, you were there with me at work while I was watching it. I didn't bother going back and watching through, honestly. With preseason, most of the bigger highlights I was able to find social media, that sort of thing. So got to see some of the big plays that happened. And, it's looking like the team is coming together a little bit, which is nice to see.
Well, and especially for your Pittsburgh Steelers, and this is kind of where I want to start things out. You and I were kind of talking about it and almost joking about it yesterday, how the Steelers have a little bit of a quarterback competition brewing between two young guys, and it seems like a lot of Steeler fans are definitely, maybe potentially anointing the next savior of the team after just one game.
Yeah, it does seem that way. I've been seeing a lot of that online, a lot of people that are, praising whether it be Will Howard or Drew Aller. I'm not ready to do that yet myself. I remember how Kenny Pickett played in that first preseason he was with the team, and it was well, to the point where a lot of people were like, oh, we got our guy. We lucked out, got the first one in the first round of this year, and he's the guy, and he was not the guy. And so, yes, it's good to see how far Drew Aller has come, especially considering they deconstructed his playing style and built him from the ground up, taught him footwork again, taught him the steps, and they went through it. And he had a great second half in that opening game, threw for 2 touchdowns, ran for 1, was fairly consistent, had just great stats all around for a first time out. Will Howard as well didn't have as much of the stats, but was really showing that poise in the pocket, showing that he really did soak up what Aaron Rodgers was doing last year like a sponge and was learning from him. The funny thing, though, is, it really seems Ben Roethlisberger just hates Mason Rudolph. Because even last night on his podcast, he was calling for, let's just give Rudolph the boot and let these two young guys duel it out the rest of preseason. And for those of you that may remember when Mason Rudolph was drafted in the 3rd round of the 2018 draft, it was to be the eventual successor of Ben Roethlisberger, and Roethlisberger threw an absolute fit. Despite the fact that they said, look, not right now. He's going to be your successor in 2 to 4 years when you retire. And sure enough, he retired 3 years later. And it's like, man, if you had just taken him under your wing and taught him the ways, then maybe we wouldn't be in this position right now. Maybe he would have evolved his game and grown as a quarterback to the point where he could be considered a bona fide starter in this league. Instead, he's been relegated to team hopping over a couple of seasons, coming back to us last year, doing half decently well when filling in for whether it be Aaron Rodgers or Mitchell Trubisky or Justin Fields or whoever else he was filling in for at any given season. But yeah, Ben's just like, yeah, let's just cut this guy now and let these other two duel it out, which I don't disagree with, but it's just very amusing hearing it from Ben Roethlisberger, knowing what their past relationship was.
Yeah, and going back to this game, Drew Aller, again, your team's 3rd round pick this year, and the conversation for both of these two guys with him and Will Howard was, who's really going to take that next step? Because again, with Will Howard, unfortunately for him, he has a much harder road to be the starting quarterback for this team down the road. Obviously, it's not going to be this year unless injuries happen, but for Will Howard, it really is a situation of hey, You were a 6th-round pick for a coaching staff that is no longer here, and we drafted this kid, Drew Allard, here in the 3rd round with this coaching staff. So we have all of the hope that he's going to be the guy. And you know what? For Drew Allard, went out there 10 for 13, 153 passing yards, 2 TDs, no sacks on the day, and no interceptions. So, again, you don't want to take too much from preseason because, again, at the end of the day, it really is just that preseason. It means nothing.
It really does.
When you kind of come down to it. But you still want to see both Allard and Howard perform. And again, it's not like Mason Rudolph had himself a bad day either. Like, he was still really efficient, 10 for 11, 93 yards, did get sacked twice. So you'd like to see potentially the O-line do a little bit better, or just him in the pocket getting that ball away. But by no means, I don't think anyone is going to sit back and say, man, this guy was just horrible. But it is really funny to watch Ben Roethlisberger basically just say, you know what, cut his ass. Like, we don't want him here. But I also sit back and I look at it and go, I agree, man, because if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers, you know that Aaron Rodgers is the starting quarterback this year. If he is the starting quarterback this year, you're not going to carry 4 quarterbacks on the roster. You might as well check out this kid that learned from Aaron Rodgers last year, like you were alluding to, and you're definitely not going to cut the guy that you drafted in the 3rd round during his rookie season. So it might as well just be like a, hey, Mason, like, man, the only way that we're going to keep you on for these preseason games here for the next little bit is if we just essentially, you know, Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to get any preseason action, and just like, I'll just do the season. And other than that, that's kind of what you're going to be relegated to.
Yeah, I mean, it almost would be nice to carry 4 quarterbacks into the regular season, just because then you've got Mason Rudolph there in case Aaron Rodgers goes down early in the season with an injury. But all signs right now are pointing to Will Howard being the QB2 going into the season, with Drew Allard being the 3rd, just sort of watching and learning the way that Will Howard did last year, essentially.
Yeah, and the other big thing that kind of came out of this one is, a former 3rd round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers only a year ago is kind of now being pushed to the side of, he probably won't even make the team, and that is Kaleb Johnson, the running back out of Iowa, who I know when we were both talking about him, it was a situation of like, man, this kid is really, really good and really, really talented. And we were both excited to see your team get him, especially after they moved away from Najee Harris. It was like, okay, like, you have a faster, not as big Najee Harris, but someone who plays the game very similar to him. And you got him in the 3rd round as opposed to having to pay for what Najee Harris was, or even draft a running back in the 1st round type situation. And, after the struggles from last year, they're kind of continuing on right now, or if they're not continuing, the staff has absolutely no confidence in him, and they're basically not playing him.
Yeah, I mean, he had those couple of drops last year, putting the ball on the ground, and I don't know if it shook his confidence or what, but we didn't even really see him in the preseason. And the guy that's sort of coming up from behind is Lou Nichols, an undrafted guy who is looking like he's going to take that RB3 spot, because it really is. It's solidified that Jalen Warren, Rico Dowdle are the 1 and 2.
Yes.
What order of 1-2 they're going to be, or if it's going to be a pure 50-50 split, we don't know. But right now on the depth chart, Lou Nichols is 3rd behind that, and then Eli Heidenreich is 4th behind that. Kaleb Johnson isn't even on that. And there was speculation that maybe he would be sort of the primary guy in the special teams, the punt return, kick return. We didn't even see him doing that in the first preseason game. And so you got to really start to wonder if he's just on his way out at this point, and they're not even going to give him snaps to find out.
Yeah, that, again, the draft pick of Eli Heidenreich, the writing wasn't necessarily on the wall for Kaleb Johnson at that point, because Eli was what, a 7th round pick for you guys?
Yeah.
You're never going to look at a 7th round pick and be like, oh man, you got to watch out for this guy. But then again, last year, what most people would say arguably was the steal of the draft happened to be Kyle Monangai, a 7th round pick out of Rutgers, who just casually had over 700 rushing yards and is now in a tandem with DeAndre Swift, where most people go, this is one of the, I'm not going to say best running back tandems in the league, but it's definitely a top 5 where you go, either one of them out there is a starting caliber running back. And to kind of switch over to the Bears here for a second, both Kyle Monangai and DeAndre Swift didn't get any action in the first preseason game for the Bears because we already know these guys are really high-end quality backs and they know this offense. What's the point of even risking them even taking like one shot to the shoulder, let alone getting those? So
Oh, exactly. And I mean, it was the same thing for that first Steelers preseason game. We didn't see any of the starters really. No Aaron Rodgers, no DK Metcalf, no Michael Pittman, no Pat Freiermuth, no Darnell Washington. So, like, really none of the true starters were out there for that first game. It really was just who among these younger guys is going to take that next step and make the team.
yeah. And obviously, preseason is just that, preseason. You're not necessarily going to sit back and say like, oh, we're expecting this, that, and the other thing. But it is definitely fun to have both of our teams out there on the field. Your Pittsburgh Steelers ended up getting the win against the Green Bay we don't like them Packers. And yeah, obviously starting out hot. The Mike McCarthy era, they are undefeated.
Yep. Yeah. But I mean, as you and I said at the beginning, preseason means nothing.
Yeah.
That was solidified for me a decade ago when we saw a team go 4-0 in the preseason and look oh so good, just to turn around and go 0-16 in the regular season.
Yeah.
And so at that point, that was the true defining factor where I was like, yeah, preseason really does mean absolutely nothing other than developing your crop for the future.
Yeah, and you hit the nail right on the head with that one. It's just they really, preseason really doesn't mean anything. Again, looking at the Bears, they beat the Browns 34-10 today, and turnovers for the Browns continue to be an issue. Bears defense is basically just going out there saying, hey, we would like all of those interceptions again here today. Again, both intercepting Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders. But, preseason, man. But it's just so much fun just to finally have it back and say, hey, we're no longer hitting our teammates. We're out there hitting our opponents for the first time.
Yeah.
And that always puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, and I mean, really, so far, so good, too. I have not heard any big stories of any major injuries yet, which is always good to see, because usually the first 2 or 3 games, we see one big name go down. So that is a nice change.
Yeah, one bit of breaking news that we do have here this week is out of the Atlanta Falcons, James Pierce, the edge rusher for them, the first-round pick that they ultimately ended up using this year's first-round pick to move up and go get, is suspended for 8 games this season. Yeah, 8 games. Obviously, there was some not so great off-field issues that came out pretty much right around the Super Bowl time. And the NFL has said it is going to be 8 games, but honestly, kind of figured that's kind of where it was going to go down when players do some really silly things.
Yep.
Sometimes stuff like that happens. But other than that, you never want to see the big names in preseason go down with injuries. I know in the Arizona Cardinals game versus the Raiders, their rookie guard Chase Besantis is out for a little bit. He ended up getting banged up. I know Jeremiah Love ended up leaving the game with a little bit of an injury, not anything serious, but it was one of those things where it was like, hey, didn't finish the game. We're probably not going to have him practicing as much this week, but when you're the running back, you kind of look at that and go, you don't really necessarily need to see what he's capable of doing, especially in this first year. But yeah, other than that, no real major injuries to talk about, which is something I know you and I are pretty happy about.
Yeah, no, it's good to see. And I mean, uh, going back to that first Steelers preseason game, we got to see some other great highlights. It looks like Jeremy Bernard is making a strong case to move himself up the depth chart because he's starting out right now at about fifth on the wide receiver. But the way he was playing was quite impressive. And so if he can do that moving forward, I would not be surprised to see it be a solid competition between him and Roman Wilson for that wide receiver 3 position. Because I know that I've been talking, and Aaron Rodgers, Roman Wilson, they've had themselves a bit of a relationship here this preseason, this training camp so far, where Roman Wilson has taken gigantic strides in comparison to his first 2 seasons in the league. And so that was excellent to see. And it almost looks like Aaron Rodgers is like grooming him to be his outlet guy. Essentially, it's like, oh, I need somebody that I can rely on a third and medium or third and short. It looks like Roman Wilson is going to be that guy. Whether that pans out remains to be seen until we see Aaron Rodgers and Roman Wilson on the field together in a game situation. We won't really know.
Exactly. And watching Jeremy Bernard from the few clips that I was also able to see, he kind of was doing exactly what we thought he was going to do. Again, coming out of Alabama, he was really just utilized pretty much in the wide receiver screen game coming out. And it was, man, if you actually give this kid the opportunity to do a little bit more than just that, he is really exciting with the ball in his hands. Like, this is a guy that I looked at and I went, you know what? If you add him to an offense that is going to utilize him, he could be that little bit of like that DJ Moore, that Deebo Samuel type of role that you've seen from some of these wide receivers coming out, where it's you just put the ball in his hands and let him work. Now, I know, sometimes the idea of maybe like a Luther Burden play style comes with him. He's not as athletic as Luther Burden, but he is someone that just get the ball into his hands and watch him work, because it is really, really exciting what he was capable of doing. And wanted to see how it looked full display going out there on the field, and it looked exactly what we hoped it would. Catches the ball and makes a few guys miss, and then marches up the field.
Yeah, exactly. Very good at making that first guy miss, which is why I hope to see him in that sort of middle passing game a little bit more. Like instead of just doing screens and flats and bubble screen, all that, like let's try and get him the ball already 3 to 5 yards down the field and then have him make that first guy miss. That would be much more ideal. And we've seen Aaron Rodgers be very good at doing those quick hitters, at the just 3 and 5 yard throws. And so that does look promising. And yeah, I've seen a couple people compare him to guys like Luther Burden or Tyreek Hill. And I'm like, no, it's more of a Deebo Samuel still. Like even seeing him out there, it really looked like a mashup of like a Deebo Samuel and almost like a Michael Pittman, where it's you bouncing off that first hit you take.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, but obviously I haven't been able to really break down the Chicago Bears game as I was doing media stuff for the football team that I cover in real life. But again, getting the win over the Browns 34-10. Offense kind of doing exactly what the offense does, which is score points. So it is kind of nice to see that at all levels, Tyson Bagent having, an okay passing day, 13 for 22, not as much as you would want to see. You would like to see the completion percentage be a little bit better, but did throw for 169 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, got sacked twice in that one. Case Keenum comes in 9 for 10, 151 yards, 2 TDs, and then Miller Moss, the former teammate of Caleb Williams back at USC, comes in 3 for 8, 48 yards, but we all kind of knew this was a very, very long shot for Miller, just with Tyson very much going to be the established QB number 2 for this team, and Case Keenum is essentially just the coach in the room. Running game, a lot of guys used, and it was just kind of very effective just down there. 82 total yards, 1 rushing touchdown, and the passing game was fairly solid. Like, you were able to get guys open, but when it comes to Ben Johnson, that's kind of what you expect, is guys to be open.
Yeah, when it comes to the Bears too, like, I don't think either one of us were too worried about what the offense was going to look like. It really was more, what's this defense going to look like? And is there anybody that's going to outshine the others and make a case for them to steal a starting role from somebody? Because really, outside of Montez Sweat, Jalen Johnson, and maybe 1 or 2 others, most of the positions could potentially be stolen by a young upstart that just comes out and wows everyone. And Dennis Allen goes, no, I can use this guy for a lot of things.
Well, and one of those guys is Beanie Bishop Jr., the corner. I believe he was a former Pittsburgh Steeler a couple of seasons ago. Yes. Ended up getting both of the 2 Chicago interceptions today. And I know he was brought in, I think, just this last week for the Bears. And so, just going back to the season prior, where you saw a guy like Nahshon Wright kind of come out of nowhere and just end up being thrusted into a starting corner role for the Bears, ended up getting, I want to say it was 6 interceptions. A guy like Beanie Bishop, while most people would sit back and go like, hey, this guy isn't really much of anything, like, he's kind of bounced around a few teams, has a few interceptions here and there, has some play time. If he can be like a rotational corner for the Bears and they can feel comfortable with that, I'm not going to be too upset, because we all know what Al Harris is capable of doing. Every single stop that he's at, he turns secondary players into interception machines, where, when he was back in Dallas, Trayvon Diggs led the league in interceptions. There's another corner with the Dallas Cowboys where Al Harris was there that also led the league in interceptions. I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head, but, for a defense last year that really only did a good job when it was 3rd down and taking the ball away, to continue to see guys take the ball away is something that I'm really happy with, because, we're going to need to still take the ball away, because the defense does kind of scare me. Only in this game getting 3 sacks on the day, and 2 coming from, a 3rd string lineman. Ooh, wow, we managed to sack him twice when he was playing with 3rd stringers. It is kind of one of those things where I'm like, okay, like, I'm still hoping to see potentially a little bit more. But again, didn't see Montez Sweat. I don't know if we saw Austin Booker again. Still having to go back and watch the game, like I'm going to be doing a little bit later today. That's when I'll be able to kind of see and maybe give a little bit more. But preseason week number 1, we're both sitting back going like, yay, we got wins.
Yeah, so far so good. Wins both on the record books and on the field as well. Just seeing some of the guys and the growth that they've had, it was really good to see. And that's the thing with your Bears defense too, is it's not necessarily all about the stats. Getting a lot of sacks in preseason doesn't really mean much. It's more to the consistency. Is that swim move or that dig move that he's doing the same every single play? Is he changing it up? Does he have that consistency essentially?
Exactly.
And that's the big thing, and Beanie Bishop, that's a good grab for you guys when he's in ball hawk mode. Because that was the only downside to him, is he was a ball hawk to the point where he's either getting an interception or he's just missing it and giving up a big play.
Yeah. Which, I mean, if you've watched Trayvon Diggs play, that's kind of the mantra that it was. And even with Nahshon Wright last year with 6 interceptions, that's kind of what he was as well, where you just kind of watch it and go, so if he's nothing but a rotational corner or just a special teamers, I'm not going to be upset with that. But it is nice to see that, someone in the secondary goes out there and is making a handful of plays. But again, with me, still need to watch the game to kind of get that full grasp of the defense and still kind of watching the offense. But for us, the kind of big thing that we wanted to talk about this week was our award predictions. We always do our way too early award predictions, either kind of a few weeks before or right before the season started. Didn't have anything too crazy planned up. It was a busy week for both yourself and myself, so we wanted to make it a little bit easier for us. And yeah, we kind of just went through everything here at the moment and went like, okay, who do we think is going to be the potential winners of each of these awards? And for us, I think we should start things out with our Offensive Rookie of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year is always one of those things that is very hyped up. You see a lot of people talk about it. I know for myself, I have 3 guys that I have on my list, going from 3 as I think is going to get the 3rd most votes to 2nd to 1st. I know you just kind of have 1, but then again, I still feel like even with yourself, you would still have a lot of these guys very similar categories from where you see them, or at least where I have them.
I just more look at it with the way too early. It's way too early to the point where, as you and I discussed, a lot of times we see the Offensive Rookie of the Year end up being a guy who was a 5th or 6th round pick that just had a lights out season for a good team that had an early injury, and he had to step up into that role. And so, for me, I didn't really do a 3-2-1 based on the voting. I for all of mine, I just sort of chose, this is the guy that I think is going to win the award when we get to the end of the year.
For sure. So starting out with the Offensive Rookie of the Year, with my number 3 spot, I have Jeremiah Love, the running back with the Arizona Cardinals. Listen, I love Jeremiah Love. I loved him coming out of Notre Dame. I thought he was, without a doubt, a top 5 pick in this draft, if not probably one. I think he's probably the best offensive player that came out in this year's class. Watching him run in that preseason game, I know a lot of people were sitting back going like, man, this guy reminds me of Adrian Peterson. And like, I saw a clip of someone saying with him just on a run, it goes like, man, who does this guy remind you of? And my first thought was, man, I don't want to say Adrian Peterson, but like just watching it, I kind of feel like it's Adrian Peterson. And then I go into the comments and everyone's like, it's AP, man, it's AP. And I'm like, well, yeah, like I can see a lot of people going down that direction. If he was on a team with a better offensive line and an offensive play caller that I can trust, he would probably win this award hands down. But he goes to the Arizona Cardinals, who have offensive line issues. LaFleur, I'm not really sure what he is going to be as a play caller. Again, coming from the Rams, he wasn't the play caller. He was just kind of in the meeting rooms. And while we've seen that be okay for some teams in the past, first-time play caller in his first year, it could either be really good or it could be really messy, and you just don't really know what you're getting. And so that's why, for me, I think Love's going to kind of have that Ashton Genty treatment from last year, where the offensive line is going to push him back a little bit. But at the same point, the play calling could potentially hurt him, but he's still going to be very efficient on the ground.
Yeah, 100%. It really is going to boil down to that offensive line. And the hope is that maybe LaFleur doesn't overuse him and risk an injury, because that would be a very big concern and that would be a big blow. You've got a lot of other depth at that running back spot. So, yeah, you use Jeremiah Love, but with the weak O-line, it is going to be tough. Thankfully, it's not as bad of an O-line as what the Raiders had last year.
Not by any stretch.
It's not great still, but it's not as bad as that was. Like, I don't expect every play for Jeremiah Love to be getting touched behind the line before he's even got the ball.
Exactly. Next guy up on my list is, funny enough, his former teammate at Notre Dame. That's Jadarian Price, the first-round pick by the Seattle Seahawks. He basically came in and is going to be replacing Kenneth Walker. And with Seattle, we know that Zach Charbonnet is there. But the issue with Zach Charbonnet is that he had a pretty bad knee injury closer to the end of last season. So even if he's ready to start the year, which I don't think he is, they're going to very much slow play him. And I think Jadarian Price is very much going to get a heavy, heavy workload in that offense, especially in the early stages of the game. And, if the Seahawks can go out there with, Sam Darnold, Jackson Smith and Jigba and all the other weapons that they have out there and get out to an early lead, you could see Price just near the end of the game just kind of killing off the clock while also getting some decent rushing yards in that. I think he's going to potentially have a better rookie season than Jeremiah Love. It's kind of like looking at Omarion Hampton and Ashton Genty last year. Omarion Hampton was the second running back taken, but we all knew Ashton Genty was clear and away the better running back out of the two. Unfortunately for Omarion Hampton, he ended up getting hurt, but I think both of us thought that last year Omarion Hampton could have had a better season than Genty just because of the team that he was on, and I feel like that's kind of where I'm leaning towards right now with Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, and I think Jadarian Price is going to be on this list purely based on the volume he's going to see, because Zach Charbonnet, last I saw, I believe he was going to be out for the first 4 to 6 weeks still. And so Price is going to be the workhorse there. My concern is just whether or not he can shoulder that load. He's not a big back like some of the others we see coming in the league. He's only 5'11", 209 pounds. So he's not the biggest guy running the ball. I know some people have compared him to like a Kyron Williams in terms of size, but he doesn't have the same speed or shiftiness of Kyron Williams. So I don't know if he's going to see quite the same sort of success. So I am hesitant on Jadarian Price. I expect he will outperform Jeremiah Love just based on the fact that he has a really good O-line and he's going to get a lot of the load when it comes to running the ball.
And for the guy that we both have this guy for our offensive rookie of the year, and that's Carnell Tate with the Tennessee Titans, the wide receiver who was selected 4th overall. This is just one of those things where I look at this class of offensive players and really just this draft class in general and go, man, I just don't think there's a ton of superstars out here. And for the Tennessee Titans, you could not leave the NFL draft without drafting one of these wide receivers. All of the guys drafted in the first round, there are things that I liked, and I think they were all worthy of a first round pick. But there was also things where I'm like, man, I have more questions on this guy. It wasn't like a couple years ago where we saw Marvin Harrison Jr., then Malik Neighbors, then we saw Rome Odunze and Brian Thompson Jr., where it was like, man, this is such a high-level wide receiver class where these guys are really worth these picks. For the Titans, it was just simply you need to give Cam Ward a wide receiver. And if you don't give Cam Ward a wide receiver, then what's the point of even having Cam Ward on your team? You might as well just send him away to a team that actually has some weapons. And this, to me, is really just going to be volume, volume, volume. He could easily have a Garrett Wilson type year, not because he's Garrett Wilson level good, but it's just because they just constantly keep throwing the ball at him.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw last year Cam Ward improved as the season progressed, which is what you want to see from a young quarterback, especially in a system that was very, very bad. They've got a new OC over there in Brian Daboll, which we know he can dial up the passing plays. Getting a number 1 wide receiver was so key for the Titans. They saw last year that they can run the ball effectively with Tony Pollard and whoever else happens to be behind him. They saw great things out of Gunnar Helm and Chuck Ikonwo. And so there's still going to be a lot of focus on Gunnar Helm. I think he is sort of going to be that safety blanket for Cam Ward because they have that familiarity. But the volume that Carnell Tate's going to get, and what sort of schemes Brian Daboll has for him, what kind of routes he's going to have him running, that's going to be a big part. And just because he's going to be such a bona fide wide receiver 1 and used so heavily in this offense, that is why I also think he is likely, if he stays healthy, going to be that offensive rookie of the year this year.
I think the benefit of the free agent signing of Wan'Dale Robinson is also going to help him immensely.
Yeah.
This was a 1,000-yard receiver for the Giants last year. Obviously knows the system that Dable wants to play, but it is nowhere near as skilled as Tate, and that should
Yeah.
help alleviate some of the pressure that Tate is going to feel, especially in the early stages of the season. But now moving over to our defensive rookie of the year. You and I actually have a little bit more difference on this one. I know for a fact we have a different winner for this list, but I think for you and myself, if we had this as a 5-man list, we would have all 5 of the same people, but I only had 3, and
Yep.
I know for yourself you only had 1. But for me, at my number 3, I have David Bailey, the edge rusher for the New York Jets. Second overall pick, and man, watching him play all college football last year, it was clear that he is hands down and far away the best edge rusher of just passing the quarterback. Like this guy, he is an elite pass rusher. The question was, what was his run stuffing ability? Can he be a every down edge rusher for the New York Jets? And I thought the game that he played, the college football playoff game that he was in, he was dominant. And he kind of alleviated some of that concern that I had while watching him at Texas Tech. Every single play that he made out there kind of made me feel a little bit more comfortable. And I think that's ultimately why he became the second overall pick, was because he is an elite pass rusher, and he can also show that he can be a good to great rough run stuffer as well. And the only problem for him with the Jets is I can see the Jets being down a lot in games, so he's not going to have as many opportunities to rush the passer that he maybe necessarily should. And I think that's going to be the biggest reason why he kind of falls down this list.
Yeah, that was my concern with David Bailey as well, is just the fact that the Jets are not a good team, and I expect them to be playing from behind a lot, which means the other teams with the lead are likely just going to try to chew that clock, run the ball, and so David Bailey's not going to get as many opportunities to get those sacks and those big explosive plays.
For me, the second guy on my list, and this is one that I ultimately changed last minute. I told you about a guy that I initially had at this spot, and I was watching some clips from camp last night after I got home from work. And for me, that's Kaleb Downs, the safety for the Dallas Cowboys. To me, this was the best defensive player overall in this draft. I loved watching Sonny Styles coming out of Ohio State, but I still said Kaleb Downs, if we were just going to take positional value out off the board, he's the best player defensively in this draft. And frankly, he probably was the best overall player in this class. And it's really, really difficult for safeties to win defensive player of the year. It's kind of like that linebacker spot where you have to be so overwhelmingly exceptional with your play, going out there, getting multiple interceptions, being a tackle machine, and just with elite coverage skills type situation. And just with that positional value, it's kind of like looking at the running backs on the offensive side of the ball, but with this being on the defensive side of the ball, where the position is kind of a little bit more undervalued. You know, if you can find just a average NFL safety, you can usually get away with having that be an effective position. But with how good Kaleb Downs is, man, the play that I saw last night where he was one-on-one coverage with CD Lamb, ends up falling down on the route, getting back up, and still blocking it in a red zone situation where CD Lamb is jumping up for a 50-50 type ball, which we see him come down a lot with, and him just getting up and just stopping that even after falling down. I was like, man, this kid really is elite, and I'm kind of feel dumb for not including him in my initial 3-man list that I even told you about yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Kaleb Downs, he would have been a number 2 for me as well on this list for the same reason. It's very difficult for a safety to win any major awards in this league, really. You know, the safety position has fallen off quite a bit, and unless he's got a lot of interceptions and a ton of tackles, we're really not going to see it. He might not even be a finalist talked about for this award just for that reason. but he is going to be a game changer on that Dallas Cowboys defense. He is a dog when it comes to that safety position. He will, I think, give Kyle Hamilton a run for his money as being the top safety by the end of this season. We'll be talking and going, wow, is it Kyle Hamilton or is it Kaleb Downs?
Yeah.
Which one of these guys is the true number one in the league? But yeah, we're going to see some special things from Kaleb Downs this year. I don't think the voters are going to give him the credit he'll deserve to actually win this award.
Yeah, and the other issue with him is some of the voters might just come out and say, well, of course he was going to be this good. He was this good in college, so why would we give him this award when we all knew that he was this type thing, if you kind of know what I'm saying. And for us, for both of our defensive rookie of the year candidates, both edge rushers, both were teammates back at Miami last season. For yourself, I know you have Ruben Bain Jr., the edge rusher for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so I'll let you make his case.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the case for both of these guys can be very similar, I feel like. But, Ruben Bain going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers doesn't really have a lot of competition at that position. He is going to be the bona fide number one at that outside linebacker edge spot because Tampa Bay does like to run that 3-4 style defense. If they do trade away Vita Vea, that is going to probably hurt Ruben Bain's production. But having Vita Vea there and then having Alex Anzalone at that middle linebacker spot is going to be a good duo up the middle that's going to force the plays outside, which is going to really create some havoc and open up the gaps for Ruben Bain Jr. And this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, I think, is going to be good on offense. They're going to be leading games, which is going to result in the other teams having to chase them by passing the ball. It's going to put teams into late game passing situations where Ruben Bain is going to be able to have the opportunity to showcase that skill, where we were saying David Bailey will not have those opportunities late in games. And so that's why Ruben Bain, for me, was the guy at the top of the list.
Yeah, and for me, I have his teammate at Miami, also a first-round pick, and that's Akeem Mesidor, the edge rusher for the Chargers, the Canadian boy as well. So for us, I know we always like to keep tabs on the Canadians that end up making their way into the NFL draft. For me, the reason why I like Akeem Mesidor is he's an older prospect. He's 25 years old right now, so he's not really going to have to go through the growing pains of what we see with some of these younger guys, where it's, man, like they're going up against grown men with that grown men's strength. Akeem Mesidor, he's a grown-ass man. Like, he's not too much younger than myself. He's only about 4 years younger than me being 29. So just seeing that, he just looked more polished. Now, with him, he's never going to have the ceiling of a guy like a David Bailey or a Ruben Bain or a Malachi Lawrence, who ended up being a first-round pick to the Cowboys. But the thing that you're going to see with him is just immediate production right away out of the gate. And the reason why I like him so much for my pick for defensive rookie of the year is he's playing with guys like Khalil Mack and Tuliolatu, who have both been really good. And just putting him out there with either one of those guys, the focus is not going to be on him. And with the power that he shows, and again, Akeem Mesidor is 6'3", 280 pounds. So that coming off the edge is a problem. He has a really good first step and get off. And if the offense is more worried about Khalil Mack coming off the other side, they're typically going to allow him to have a lot more one-on-ones. And for me, that's kind of why I have Akeem Mesidor. And I understand where you're coming with Ruben Bain, and I liked Ruben Bain as a prospect. The big issue for me is the arm length, man. We have never seen someone with his arm length ever have a double-digit sack season in the NFL. And as talented as he was at finding ways to get around people and showing that at the college level that really wasn't an issue, we saw a guy last year that was drafted 4th overall to the New England Patriots in Will Campbell say all the same things, being like, man, I'm an offensive tackle. I never had issues at any level that I've always played at with those short arms. And then we saw it be a big problem in the NFL. And so for me, I like Bane as a player. I liked him as a prospect, but that arm length, it scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, that's understandable. I totally get that.
So for us, moving over to our offensive player of the year, again, for yourself and myself, this is one of those categories where we actually have a different player at the top. Okay. So for me at number 3, I have running back Ashton Genty for the Las Vegas Raiders. I love Ashton Genty as a running back prospect. To me, he's been my number 1 running back prospect that I have scouted and evaluated since Saquon Barkley. I have him ahead of what I had Bijan Robinson as well. This dude, you just talk about him, he's impossible to take down. But the problem with the Raiders last year was every single time he would get the ball, he would be being hit 2 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Yet he was still just shy under 1,000 rushing yards last year, and he also showed out his ability to be a good receiving back. Like at Boise State, they never used him as a receiving back because it was just, we're just going to hand the ball off and then you're going to rush it for 60 plus yards every single time you touch the ball. With this Raiders offense, they have a better offensive line. Their play calling is so much better. And with Kirk Cousins, he's also going to just look at situations and go, hey, this passing play isn't going to work. We're audibling it to a run play where you are going to get 3 or 4 yards on this just because of the way that the defense is set up. So all of that, I think you're going to see a monster year out of Ashton Genty, and he's very much going to be in that conversation for that offensive player of the year.
Oh yeah, 100%. Ashton Genty is going to have a much better year this year because you got to remember, Kirk Cousins is good at utilizing running backs as well. Look at how much better Bijan Robinson was playing as the year progressed last year once Kirk Cousins came in and became the quarterback. All of a sudden, you're looking at it going, well, goddamn, why? If they had Kirk Cousins from week 1, the Falcons probably would have been a playoff team.
Yeah.
It was wild to see. And he has that ability where even if he's not going to check right out of a pass play, he's going to let Genty know, just be like, hey, after you throw this block, just jump out 2 or 3 yards to my right here so I can dump it off to you. And we're going to see a lot of improvement is what people will call it from Ashton Genty, but really it's improvement in that offensive line so that he's able to make a move before he has 5 hands on him already.
Exactly. Next guy up I have on my list, and this is Jahmyr Gibbs with the Detroit Lions. Finally got paid. Now he's the highest paid running back in NFL history. That weight is now off of his shoulders. But for me, when you look at Jahmyr Gibbs, this is one of those guys that every single year has only gotten better and better and better. And with him being pretty much the main focused running back this season, there's no more David Montgomery there. Isaiah Pacheco is in the number 2 role for the Lions, but I think both of us look at David Montgomery and go, he is a significantly better running back than Isaiah Pacheco. And with Gibbs, he's going to be the focal point of this offense. He averages the last 2 seasons around 250 carries. You're easily going to see Gibbs get over that 300 mark. And if he's getting over that 300 mark, the numbers are going to be staggering. But the other thing is he also got over 600 receiving yards last year as well. So Jahmyr Gibbs, he just has the capability of being electrifying. Like, again, he got 1,200 yards on the ground last year, adding with the 600 receiving yards. There is a very real possibility that he goes over 2,500 yards total on the ground, along with the 13 rushing touchdowns and 5 receiving TDs. You could easily see both of those numbers improve this year. And when you have a running back doing all of that, man, of course he's going to be in the conversation for Offensive Player of the Year. It's because he's just basically giving out Hall of Fame numbers for touchdowns and yards at the young age of 24.
Yeah, and I mean, the addition of Isaiah Pacheco doesn't concern me at all for this. I really feel as though Pacheco was brought in to primarily be a pass blocker,
Yep.
on the surefire passing plays, because Pacheco is a very good running back when it comes to the pass block. And so that really feels more like what that was intended to be. And Gibbs is just going to be the workhorse for that run game. And if the Lions can keep their games under control and keep a lead, then yes, we're going to see Gibbs start to run away with yards, after yards, touchdowns after touchdowns. The concern is really what the play calling is going to be in Detroit. That's my concern overall. Is it going to be a situation where they start having to play from behind and then it's all passing, so it's going to be all Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown? That's where the concern comes for me. But either way, yeah, with David Montgomery not there, I see no reason Gibbs doesn't get over 1,800 yards this year. I expect him to get definitely double-digit touchdowns, possibly as high as 15. Like, I would not be surprised to see him a touchdown a game type of player.
Totally. Yeah, I know what you're saying here. And for both of our offensive player of the year, we both have a wide receiver, but I think I will kind of lead my charge first with the guy that I have, and that's simply Ja'Marr Chase. Ja'Marr Chase is the best receiver in football, and I think by a pretty good margin. When Joe Burrow is healthy and he's out there, you can pretty much guarantee that Ja'Marr Chase is the Triple Crown winner, meaning that he's going to have the most yards, he's going to have the most receptions, he's going to have the most touchdowns. And even if Joe Burrow only plays, let's say, in 10 games this year, that is probably enough to give Ja'Marr Chase the opportunity to be the leader in one of those categories. Because even with Joe Flacco, when Joe Flacco was out there last year, Ja'Marr Chase was the primary read for Joe Flacco in most of those games. And Ja'Marr Chase still had really good numbers. And I'm going to knock on wood and say that Joe Burrow is going to be healthy this year. And if Joe Burrow is healthy this year and Ja'Marr Chase gets the Triple Crown, well, I'm sorry, guys. If you are the Triple Crown winner, you are the Offensive Player of the Year. We've only seen it, 4 or 5 times ever done in NFL history. One time already being Ja'Marr Chase. If he does it again, whether it's receiving yards, touchdowns, receptions, if he's 1, 2, 3, deserves to win the Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah. Well, and if I'm not mistaken, did he get slighted for it when he won the Triple Crown a few years ago? Or was he the Offensive Player of the Year? I think
he was the Offensive Player of the Year.
Was he? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was worried that maybe he didn't even get it that year. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. If Joe Burrow stays healthy, then Ja'Marr Chase is going to be pushing for that Triple Crown. He's going to be that guy. I just have big concerns over whether or not Joe Burrow can stay healthy behind an offensive line that's going to rival the Arizona Cardinals and how bad it is. Like, it's very, very bad O-line, and I worry for Joe Burrow's health. And that's the reason I didn't have Ja'Marr Chase on my list.
So I apologize. He has not won it yet. So he was indeed slighted from that. But
right,
yeah. Which again, if you do win the Triple Crown, I'm sorry, but you should be the Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, well, especially if he does it a second time.
Yeah,
like they have to give it to him at that point. But yeah, no. For myself, I have another wide receiver. I have your Chicago Bears wide receiver, Luther Burden III, coming out of nowhere and taking this Offensive Player of the Year award this year, solely because I think the Bears are going to get a little less love in some other voting categories, namely the MVP. And I think it'll translate over and it will be the Offensive Player of the Year. And I look back to that third year that Amon-Ra St. Brown had. I know this is only the second year for Luther Burden, but I feel like Ben Johnson has a little bit more control here in Chicago than he did in Detroit. And we still saw that second year for Amon-Ra St. Brown be a phenomenal year, over 1,000 yards. But that third year with 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, honestly, that's the kind of season I see Luther Burden having this year. I know he's dealing with a little bit of a groin issue right now in preseason, but if they manage that properly and have him healthy by week 1, I really do think we're going to see that Amon-Ra level of elevation in this Luther Burden game where he's going to be up there talked about with Jamar Chase, with Justin Jefferson, with Puka Nakua, with
Jackson
JSN,
Smith and Jigba, yeah.
right? He's going to be in that conversation. And I think he's going to have enough of those splash, like just fantastic highlight reel plays as a result of the quarterback that's throwing him the ball, that he's going to get those additional votes when we get to that time. And I think Luther Burden surprises people and takes the offensive player this year.
I would be ecstatic with that. And you brought up a really good point. And this is one of the things that I was going to say is we saw that massive leap for Amon-Ra in year number 3. I think that's where we're going to see Luther really take that next step. Obviously, I think Luther could easily have over 1,000 yards and over 10 touchdowns, if not 10 touchdowns this season. The only thing that would give me question is just how many other weapons that are out there with Colston Loveland. Colston Loveland is so good and so dynamic, and he's just such a mismatch, and Kaleb loves throwing him the ball, and he also loves throwing Rome Odunze the ball, who Rome Odunze, again, a former top 10 pick, and you just kind of watch him play, and he's had an amazing training camp thus far this year. I just worry about the numbers. Now, if Luther Burden goes out there and catches, like, let's say 70 passes this season and has like 1,400 yards and let's just say 9 touchdowns, hell yeah, he is totally deserving of that just because of the ridiculous amount of numbers he's putting up for the lack of catches, I would say, type situation. Because even Amon-Ra in that breakout season had 119 catches, 1,515 yards and 10 TDs. And if Luther Burden puts up, let's say, 1,400 with like 70 catches, that's incredible territory right there. And so now moving over to our Defensive Player of the Year award. This was, for both of us, probably the easiest award to do. I know when we were kind of talking about it last night, it was, okay, who are the 2 other guys that we have, or at least for myself, behind the eventual winner? We have Myles Garrett as our Defensive Player of the Year award. If he did what he was capable of doing last year with the Browns, and this was a stat that I read this morning, Myles Garrett only was on the field for 88 snaps where the Browns had the lead in a game. Broke the sack record, was as dominant as he was, and he was only out there when the Browns had the lead for 88 snaps. That is pretty much 2 games worth of workload there where his team had the lead, which is insane to think about. Now he goes over to the Rams, where you know for a fact that teams are going to be throwing the ball a ton. And if you also have a certain guy in Aaron Donald out there as well, yeah, it's going to be scary for Myles Garrett this year.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You know, I see no reason why Myles Garrett doesn't get it. He's on a better team. He's got a better supporting cast around him, which means teams are not going to be able to triple team him anymore. And he's going to have so many more opportunities where it's 3rd and medium, 3rd and long, you know, a hope and a prayer type of play. And it's going to be scary for quarterbacks because you can't hold the ball too long with Myles Garrett out there. He is going to come down like a freight train and just destroy you. And like you said, if a certain guy named Aaron Donald decides to come out of retirement and sign with that team, it's going to be even harder for teams to even double team Myles Garrett at that point, because you're going to go, well, we can't leave Aaron Donald unblocked. We have to at least have a guy on him. You know, and Brendan Fisk has been doing great things so far this camp as well, where it's, man, that this front 7 for the Rams is going to be scary for teams to go against. Like, I'm worried for my quarterback if I'm the 49ers, the Seahawks, or the Cardinals.
Especially if you're the Cardinals. Because, oh my God, yeah. But for me, number 2, I have Will Anderson. Number 3, I have Max Crosby. Let's be honest here, the Defensive Player of the Year award is really becoming either who has the most interceptions or who has just basically the best sack type season. But yeah, with Will Anderson, I kind of feel like he's in this position that Myles Garrett was in for a lot of years when Aaron Donald was still at his best, where it was like, man, it's clear you are the second best defensive player in football right now. But the unfortunate nature is you have that Aaron Donald, that Myles Garrett, one of the best players defensively of a generation we've seen. Will Anderson, if Myles Garrett wasn't playing this year and if we saw a full year of Aaron Donald, I would happily slap $100 on Will Anderson to win this award, just because it would be a fairly easy bet. And Max Crosby, well, he's Max Crosby. How do you not have this guy in the conversation every single year?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just so dominant, both of those two guys. And as always, I'm going to throw out the homer pick where it's like, I'm going to be watching and hoping that TJ gets back to form. Because if TJ Watt can get back to the player we know he can be, we could see him jump up into this list and go, hey guys, don't forget, I still play football in the same league as you guys.
Yep, without a doubt. Moving over to our comeback player of the year. And this is kind of a weird award because if a certain Aaron Donald does re-sign with the Rams and plays this season, he's winning comeback player of the year, and it's not even going to be a competition.
No.
But the problem is he is not signed with the Rams, and while we feel like he is going to play with the Rams in some capacity this year, if he only plays for the last 8 games of the season and into the playoffs, is that enough for you to consider that to be a comeback player of the year? I know you have Aaron Donald as your comeback player of the year award winner, and so I'll kind of let you take us on from there.
Well, yeah, I mean, just like you said, like if he comes back, I see no reason why he doesn't win it, even if it is late in the season. We've seen the voters for this award, especially, it seems to be more of a feel-good story type of thing.
Yep.
And with Aaron Donald, just him coming out of retirement to play with this team, with the prospect of getting to play in a Super Bowl in his home, like the home stadium, like honestly, if he's back, he's the one that wins it, no matter what point he comes back, as long as it's before the voting is cut off for him, obviously. Aside from that, though, the person you have as your number one is who I think will win it as well if Aaron Donald does not return in time to garner any votes for it.
Yeah, and for Aaron Donald was my number 3 on this list. Kyler Murray is my number 2. That's just simply if, Kevin O'Connell can do his quarterback rehab like we saw with Sam Darnold and a little bit with Kirk Cousins. If, Kyler Murray can take a step forward, it's going to be tricky to not have him in this category. But for me, my number 1 guy is Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, Mahomes didn't have the success that he did last year, ended up getting hurt, I think, with 6 games left in the season last year. This is, you can never count Mahomes out, not even in the MVP conversation. He's the best quarterback in football, whether people want to agree with that statement or not, just because he hasn't had necessarily the statistical years that we've seen from him early on in his season. If Mahomes plays like 90% of what we saw from Mahomes the past couple of seasons, it's going to be really hard to not have arguably the face of the NFL coming back and getting back to form as the comeback player of the year. It's just plain and simple as that.
Yeah. No, and that's exactly it, because he is such the face of this league that there's no way. If he plays even close to what he was, then he's going to win this. But this is one of the harder awards to predict, because we have guys coming back every year from injuries that you never know who's going to perform. We've got guys like Daniel Jones could come back and all of a sudden be playing like he was prior to that injury and go, oh my God, he is good again, and could make a case for himself. You've got guys like Tua Tagovailoa in Atlanta, who all of a sudden goes to a new team and remains concussion free for a season and puts up phenomenal yards with some really good weapons there that he can utilize to garner those stats, and so there's very real possibilities, even guys who weren't out hurt that have just joined new teams. A guy like Geno Smith, maybe the Jets go off and all of a sudden the Jets are a playoff team, a wild card possibility team, going from what he was with the Raiders. Voters would look at that and go, that's a pretty good comeback. So there are a lot of what ifs when it comes to this specific award that make it very, very difficult to predict.
Well, and we also didn't even mention the name of Joe Burrow, where I feel like, I know the NFL has talked about giving the actual awards names to Joe Burrow award or the Burrow Comeback Player of the Year award, because he's already won it twice. And if he plays a full season healthy and gets back to that like MVP form that we're used to kind of seeing from Joe Burrow, how are you not going to say Joe Burrow couldn't win it a third time with everything else that we've already stated? Again, if we say Mahomes is in that breath of the conversation, if he gets back to form, he's going to win it. Same thing can be said about Joe Burrow, man. Like, again, this is a guy that just a year prior to last season threw for almost 5,000 passing yards and 43 passing touchdowns. If he throws for 4,600 passing yards and let's just say 39 passing touchdowns this season, are we sure that the award voters aren't just going to be like, man, yep, give Joe his third Comeback Player of the Year award trophy because he deserves it?
Yep. Oh yeah. It's there's so many possibilities here, and Joe Burrow, another one. There's more coming to mind. Like the Bo Nix went down with that injury. You got Malik Neighbors. You got the Crayon Eater, Cam Scatabo. Like any number of these guys.
Jaden Daniels is a hot candidate right now for that award. Right? It is such a hard one to predict. Another one that is really hard to predict, and that is Coach of the Year, because one of the big problems with this Coach of the Year award is it's pretty much the coach who has his team overperforming than what everyone said that they should be doing this year. It's never necessarily the best coach of the year that ends up winning it. It's just kind of the coach that is like, oh yeah, this guy overexceeded with what his teams were. And oh yeah, we definitely don't see this guy, getting this award because we've talked about him every single year. And this is kind of where I feel like Ben Johnson kind of got slighted last year, even though he was a first-time head coach and he brought his team to a division title, a playoff win, and some of the most exciting football that we saw last year from offense. It just kind of felt like the voters were like, well, yeah, of course you did that. Look at what you did with the Lions for the last 3 years. This was basically you just taking all the success you had as an offensive coordinator and translated it to a head coach. Good job, buddy. We all knew this was coming. And so this is why that award kind of becomes a little bit difficult, is because if it was Coach of the Year, Bill Belichick would have won it damn near every season when he was with the Patriots dynasty. Andy Reid, same thing right there, So it is a little bit tricky. You and I do have a different pick for the top candidate, but your winner is my number 2. For me, my third guy is Jesse Minter, the new head coach of the Baltimore Ravens. This was a hire coming over from the Chargers. Minter is a defensive mastermind. He's kind of going to be in that category of a Mike McDonald. And as we know, that Ravens team, if they take that next step under Minter, they're going to talk about him being in the head coach of the year award. For me, my winner of the award is, funny enough, the former Giants head coach. That's John Harbaugh. This is one of the best coaches in the NFL, going over to a team that has expectations of making the playoffs with their young quarterback, their young running back, and their really, really scary defensive line and linebacking core. let's just say let's just get funky here, buddy. Let's say the Giants go out there and win that division with the Cowboys and the Eagles also being out there. If the Giants do that, Harbaugh's winning Coach of the Year. It doesn't matter what anyone else does.
Oh yeah, yeah, hands down. I mean, Harbaugh is a good pick for that spot for sure. Especially if he can get the Giants rolling. We've seen him struggle sometimes with the younger guys, though. There is definitely that disconnect in generations. So I do wonder if he's going to be able to get the best of the best out of Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo. Will Malik Neighbors truly be back? We've seen him on the field, which shocked both of us, I think, with the reports we were hearing. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. I like what you said earlier. I'm not a fan of the way they choose this award, because for me, it should be the coach that essentially like the MVP. You take that coach away from the team and they are not that team anymore. And that's why the guy I've got at my number one was the same one I had at my number one last year. And he'll probably be the same one I have at my number one next year until they finally give him the damn award, because he deserves it, even if they do expect him to do it.
Yeah, and your number one is my number two, and that's Ben Johnson of my Chicago Bears, where, again, you look at what Ben Johnson did this last season versus the head coach of the Bears before that, in Matt Eberflus. It's two different teams. It is two completely different teams, and this is where I start to come down this line where it gets really tricky for me with the voters, what they're doing. And I agree with you. It should be, if you take this coach away, what effect does that have to the team? And I do think Ben Johnson is in that department of being really, really good. And if you take him away from the Bears organization is completely different, and this team is completely different, even if they have all the same players. But that's just going to be the thing, is that Ben Johnson is going to have this be a successful year with the Bears. We're going to see potentially an MVP level season, knock on wood, from Kaleb Williams. Even you are saying Luther Burden has the potential to win Offensive Player of the Year. If the Bears win 10, 11 games this year in the division that they're in, going up against the teams that they're going to have to go up against, people have talked about the Bears being the number one regression candidate team in the NFL, and that's where I could see, if the Bears do win that 11 or 10, 11, 12 wins this season, win the NFC North again, where you could say Ben Johnson wins it. But I just have that fear, man, that it's just going to be, well, of course Ben Johnson is doing this. It's Ben Johnson. Let's go after the feel-good story.
Yeah. No, that is the unfortunate thing. What it's going to have to be is, honestly, Ben Johnson is going to have to drag this Bears team to like a 16-1 record for them to give him this award.
I think the team next year will be the best team under Ben Johnson in the Ben Johnson era that we've had so far, because we're probably going to have better defense next season, but it's still going to be really fun to watch. And I completely understand why you would pick Ben Johnson for Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
But for us, the most important award in the NFL cycle, and that is the MVP award. You and I have the exact same winner of this award, but the unfortunate nature with the MVP award is it's the most valuable player, but it's really the most valuable quarterback. And we haven't seen a player not be a quarterback win this award since Adrian Peterson back in 2013. Like, it has been a long, long time, and I understand where the voters come from with this award, because the most valuable player in team sports, of all team sports, in any sport out there, is the quarterback position. They have the most on their plate. They have the most things that they have to do. And if you don't have a good quarterback, well, guess what? You are not winning. And for me, my number 3 guy is my quarterback in Kaleb Williams. You have seen me many times kind of struggle to accept that this young man is as good as he is and could potentially go win this award, just because as a heartbroken Bears fan and just bloodied and beat down Bears fan that I am, it's kind of tricky to even imagine that my quarterback could be in conversations like this, but it does feel real. The second year Caleb Williams was in a Lincoln Riley offense, well, he won the Heisman and was one of the most exciting players in college football. This is the second year that he's in Ben Johnson's offense, and he has way better weapons than he ever did, and frankly, a better offensive mind than Lincoln Riley. And with the defense the way that it is, you're going to see the Bears in a lot of shootouts. Ben Johnson also stated that he wants to have the highest scoring offense ever. He didn't say that it was going to be this year, but he wants to have the highest scoring offense ever. And if that's the case, Caleb Williams is winning the MVP award. But for me, as the salty Bears fan that I am, I can't have him winning the award just yet because it scares me to try to jinx that.
No, and I do agree with that. Like, Caleb Williams for me would be a very close second on this. I think it's going to be really close in the voting this year,
As it was last year.
Caleb Williams, I think he's going to be right there with it, vying for that MVP award this year.
For me, number 2 is Joe Burrow. Again, for me, I sit back and I say, when Joe Burrow is healthy, I don't think there is another quarterback that is comparable to him. He's obviously, I think Mahomes is more gifted. I just think Joe Burrow is just so otherworldly good, and I do have him behind Mahomes just in terms of that, but with him not having the strongest arm or the most athleticism, he's just basically just elite at every category with maybe the exception of athleticism. But for me, I truly do think the guy that we both have as our number 1 is just bound for a special season, and that's Justin Herbert of the Chargers, man. This is a guy that kind of has everything going for him in life. He got engaged to Madison Beer this offseason, and we know when star quarterbacks get engaged to high-profile celebrities, they typically tend to go off. We saw Josh Allen after he got engaged and married to Haley Steinfeld. That's where he won his MVP season. But the other thing is, just taking away all of the off-field stuff, he has an offensive play caller who's probably the best offensive play caller he's ever had in Mike McDaniels. He has a running game that is going to be really, really good, predominantly featuring Omari and Hampton. He has some pretty good wide receiver weapons, has some good tight ends. Again, the fact that David Njoku is just kind of forgotten, people have forgotten that he's signed with the Chargers. This is a really, really talented tight end. He's not what he used to be when he first came into the league, but that is a high-level weapon. Gadsden, we saw him as a rookie be a really fun weapon, but the biggest thing here is the offensive line, knock on wood, is going to be a lot healthier and frankly better because of the play caller being able to scheme up ways to keep Justin Herbert healthy. And with all of that put together, it's going to be hard for me not to look at Herbert, especially if they're winning as many games as they can in that really tough division. I could easily see Herbert running away with this award.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me is that play calling. Mike McDaniels, like I've been seeing clips of him through camp, through the start of the preseason here. I have not seen him this excited since the first day he arrived in Miami.
Yeah.
And was bright-eyed and was like, I'm a head coach finally. I can do this. And then the world came crashing down because, like, buddy, the head coach of the Miami Dolphins.
And Tua as your quarterback.
Exactly. Like we've seen a few times where he'll scheme something up in practice and Herbert just casually airs it out on the pass. And he's like, oh, okay. I have a quarterback that can throw the ball.
Well, there's that clip that you sent me where it was McDaniels was mic'd up. He was looking over at Harbaugh going, quarterbacks can't make this. Let's see how close he can get. And then Herbert just casually goes out and does that. And he goes, you got to be kidding me. And then it was funny. Harbaugh just kind of as he's walking away, goes, I could have easily made that too. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, Harbs, I loved you, former Bears quarterback, you were first round. You're not making that throw that Herbert made, or as casually as he made it.
Well, exactly. And we're going to see some crazy things out of Mike McDaniel this year, because you got to remember, what was he doing when he had Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill? Look at what he was able to do with Devin Achane. He's got Omari and Hampton. Omari and Hampton is a much better running back than Achane. Not to take anything away from Devin Achane, great running back, but Omari and Hampton is got to be one of the biggest sleepers to be a top 5 running back in this league that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's going to elevate him to that level, it's Mike McDaniels.
This is a coach that just knows how to scheme up running, because even before Devon Achane got there, he was still able to get high level of production out of running backs that other people couldn't get production out of. And so to see Herbert now have that run game, have the receivers that he has, because Ladd McConkey, let's not forget that Ladd McConkey could be a sleeper candidate for offensive player of the year type thing, because he's a guy that showed out that he can be a number one weapon, but with the amount of issues that the Chargers had last year, it kind of got away from everyone on that Chargers offense. That Chargers offense is going to be so much fun to watch, man. And with Herbert, he could very easily win this award and run away with this award. But that is going to do it here today, guys. Thank you all very much for watching. For Sterling, I'm Brendan saying thank you all very much for watching. Peace.